And we are live. Hello, puppies, for the 5th episode of the Isle of series. Always sounds a little awkward, of Isle of, but hey, you know what? So, for tonight's episode, this is Isle of Literature. And as a fair warning, before I introduce our guest onto the show, Colorado is having a perfectly timed storm right now. So we've been having some issues keeping StreamYard afloat. So if I just randomly cut out, don't worry about it. So without further ado, I would like to bring onto the show Matt, the boy who had 7.
Hey, what's up, everybody? I'm here hanging out with my boy.
Hi.
Ammon. So we're here to hang out and have a good time.
Woo-woo. Hello. How are you both doing?
Good.
Yeah, we're doing good. I'm excited to talk about books. We talk about comics in this community all the time, which is great.
There's
also another type of fiction that I want to get to, so I'm excited to hang out with you today.
Super Russ was cracking me up earlier. He was in your live show. He was like, wait, you guys do other types of books without pictures in them?
Yes, sir.
Alrighty. Well, speaking of Super Russ, I see him there. I see United Comics Universe, Sam's Tangle Web, Comics on the Mind. Hello, everybody, for hopping on and joining us this evening. Alrighty. So, I'm gonna attack you right off the bat here, Matt. Are you ready for your questions?
Yeah, I'm ready. Oh
no.
There goes my sister's Christmas gift. Sorry, little kid. Yes, I'm ready. Let's do it.
Alrighty. Question number 1 for you, sirs.
Okay.
How old were you when you started reading books?
Ooh, so as far back as my recollection goes, my mom used to read to us when we were really little. And I can remember her reading me 3 specific books and sitting at her knee and being super little. I'm talking like 3, 4, 5 years old, and excited to continue the story and crying when we had to go to bed because I wanted to know more. So those books mean a lot to me. And as an adult, I still love them. And I'm going to share them with you here. So the first one was Lord of the Rings. She used to read us Lord of the Rings all the time. So she read us The Hobbit first, then she read us the Lord of the Rings series. And I don't have it in front of me because one of my kids is reading it upstairs, which is cool. So I'm okay with it. But I remember just falling in love with Frodo and really just being inspired. Like, I'm the type of human being that is really inspired by acts of bravery and by people overcoming hard times in their life. And it makes me want to be even braver and have more courage and overcome the things in my life. And that's why I really love fiction so much and comic books, because we see a lot of that, right?
Yeah.
But I love Frodo and the fact that he was willing to carry the burden of the One Ring and all that he had to go through just to destroy this when he had nothing to do with it, you know? So I remember being inspired by him and loving the Lord of the Rings. My mom also read us the Chronicles of Narnia.
Ooh.
And so I am a huge Narnia fan. I often have teased my kids, like, we'll be somewhere and I'm like, look at that picture. We can get into Narnia through there. You know, and we have done that to you guys your whole life, right? Every time I see a wardrobe, if we're shopping for furniture, if we're on vacation, I'm like, let's go into the wardrobe and go to Narnia, you know? So I'm a huge Narnia, Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe fan. I remember my mom reading us all of those when we were a kid, and they meant a lot to me too. Aslan is one of the coolest characters ever to be created. And then last one but not least, and I don't know if you've ever heard this book, but this is called The Whipping Boy. So, and The Whipping Boy is about a prince that when he'd get in trouble, because he was of royal lineage, he wasn't allowed to be spanked or hit. And so he had to get a whipping boy, which was this common kid down from the city. And when he would get in trouble, the kid would get the spankings for the prince. And so obviously the prince was a brat. And there's this whole story of them switching places and getting abducted by these bad guys, and the prince having a change in his life and realizing how amazing the whipping boy was to do everything for him and changing his attitude and becoming a better person. And so this book right here, though, there's a lot of symbolism in somebody taking your pain and being hurt for you, which has always resonated in my soul, to be able to to take others' pains and help others and to make the world a better place. So those 3 books I can remember my mom reading to me. So I grew up with books all the time. Got into comic books because my brother-in-law came into the room and dropped me off a stack of about 50 to 100 books. Fell in love with those. But when I became an avid reader, it was actually as an adult. So I read a lot, and I read tons of books that I loved, but I didn't read all the time constantly until I became an adult. And I'm going to tell you, I went to see a movie, and in this movie, there's this little kid named Harry. And this little kid is watching himself die, and he's going to have his soul sucked out by a Dementor. So obviously Harry Potter, right? and in that scene where he finally figures out how to use the Patronus and save himself, I sat there in the movie theater and I was blown away because I was one of those guys. I was young. I was maybe 20 something when the Harry Potter books started coming out, and I'm like, oh, this is for kids. It's not for me. And my wife's like, well, let's go see the movie. I was like, okay, well, we haven't seen 1 and 2. Well, let's just go see 3. So I went over, watched the movie. This guy was a baby. He's probably like 6 months old, and we're in the movie. And I remember watching that and just being like, oh my gosh, this is one of the greatest scenes I've ever seen in a movie. And so I went home. I picked up books 1, 2, 3. I started reading them. I fell in love with Harry Potter. And after that, I was every midnight waiting for the next book to come out, you know? And so after that, I just started reading everything that I could get my hands on. Yes, there we go. Little Harry Potter love. Started getting my hands into everything I could. And then I went to school to become a writer. And I was, researching and trying to write things. And this is early 2000s. And I heard someone say, you cannot write a book unless you've read 1,000 books. And I was like, oh, I don't know if that's true for everyone because there are those people that are just great.
J.K. Rowling.
Yeah, J.K. Rowling. But I said, okay, I'm going to take the good out of it that I can. I need to read more. And so I just have been since then been reading so much. So that's me. That's my story as an adult.
Very nice, very nice. And I was going to say, you have to read 1,000 books to be a writer. I've only read a dozen. Help.
Maybe you're one of those special ones.
So, which actually led into my next question. Sure. How many books do you think you've actually read?
Oof. So I kept account for a while, and the last time, this was like, I graduated from college with my creative writing degree in 2014. And at that time, I think I was up like at 150 books, and I've probably doubled that by now. So I've read quite a bit of books. I'm trying to get to 500, halfway to that 1,000. I'm probably, I'd say 350-ish. So
that's still pretty respectable though. That's a lot of books. Do you ever remember half of them?
You know what? What I find myself when I read comics, it comes in and it goes out because I'm usually reading them for just like quick enjoyment, Some of them, when I sit down and actually take the time to think about it, I'll digest them and I'll hold on to them, But when I sit down and read books like Romeo and Juliet and different Shakespeare books, look at that face. Look at that face. I'm a huge Shakespeare fan. This is one of my favorite books of all time, and it is The Scarlet Letter by Nathaniel Hawthorne. This book means a lot to me. So I had this guy when I was only 18 and my wife was 17. And because we were so young and because things in our life changed in a way that we weren't expecting, I got a lot of people to look at me like I was wearing that Scarlet Letter. And so after reading this book, it blew my mind. And I really felt a deep connection to that book. And there's just a lot of stuff that I find that I read it and I love it and I digest it better when it's books like these,
Yeah. So since you have such a wide diversity, do you actually have a favorite book?
Yeah, that's That's easy.
Oh, okay.
It is every book in the Harry Potter series.
I was gonna say if I need to extend it to a series, I will.
So I kid you not. And I was saying this earlier on the show I was earlier on, but the show I was on earlier, that was my show. Anyway, I have read every single Harry Potter book over 12 times, some of them up to like 17. And I cannot tell you how amazing, as somebody that's trying to write and become a writer and that has sat down and studied the way writing works, to read J.K. Rowling's books and see the type of structure and the type of magic and the type of world and the way that she uses the English language to create magic. Like, those books are my all-time favorite. I mean, but there's so many good books, so many, but those just really mean so much to me. Harry Potter is one of the greatest characters ever created, in my opinion. So
Harry Potter was actually that, and the Percy Jackson series was actually the two series that actually got me really into reading.
Yeah.
Because I both started reading those when I was in elementary school, and and I got through them the first time many years ago, and then I reread them again my freshman year of high school. So I mean, and when you're older you can definitely appreciate the language and the world that she creates, because when you're young you're only paying attention to the main storyline, but then when you actually read into it, you're like, oh, there's like so much more going on here than meets the eye. And which is really, really cool.
The thing I love about Harry Potter, before I read Harry Potter, my favorite books were probably Lord of the Rings and Narnia, because my mom read them to me and I read them plenty of times myself. And they have a lot of wisdom in them. There's quotes in those books that you could live by in your life and be a good person. And J.K. Rowling comes along and she has literally 20 plus quotes in those books that if you lived by those quotes, you would be an excellent human being, And so she just blew my mind. Some of the quotes that she has are like, this is to live by. This is good stuff. So I don't know. I'm in love with her and everything that she did in those books, at least. And Percy Jackson, though. Whew. Oftentimes I will judge a book by a moment in the books, right? So there's a moment in the fourth Harry Potter book where Harry's in the graveyard. Voldemort has just been resurrected. And guys, spoilers, but you should have read it by now.
I've read it in years. Like, come on.
But there's that moment where their wands touch, right? And then all the spirits that Voldemort has killed come out of the wand and protect Harry, right? That is one of the greatest moments in a book. I remember reading it. I was living at my mother-in-law's house. I was like 19 years old. I couldn't put the book down, and it was like 4 a.m, and I had work at 6, and I was lying on the floor so I could hold my little light up. Actually, we didn't even have phones back then, so I think it was like a nightlight on the wall, and I was like close to reading, right?
Destroying your eyesight in the meantime.
Exactly. And I remember all of a sudden I'm just like and I just started sobbing reading that entire thing. It was just like powerful. And then my wife wakes up, she's like, what's wrong? What's wrong? And I'm like, nothing, Harry Potter. Like, But hey, Percy Jackson had one of those moments. And I don't know if you remember the moment where he has to hold up the world for Atlas. Do you remember that? But that is one of those moments in a book where you're just like,
what's her name? The island girl, right?
Tis blasphemy for sure. Comic assassin. No, that's one of those moments.
Annabeth. Well, because Annabeth is holding it.
Yeah.
So Percy has to take it from Annabeth.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. That whole scene is one of those moments in a book where I'm just like, I love it. I love it. I'm glad you brought up Percy Jackson because I love that series.
Percy Jackson was actually the first book that I read. I actually identify it very often as the book that got me into reading.
That's awesome.
Yeah, I really like the Percy Jackson series.
JP named his dog Percy.
Yeah.
So he has a lot of love in the community.
Yeah. No, I remember you telling me maybe a few months ago when I started to get to know you, and you're like, "Oh, I love Percy Jackson." I'm like, "Me too."
All right, last question for you, Matt.
Sure.
Have you written any of your own manuscripts yet?
I have. So in 2003, my best friend calls me up. He's like, dude, I had a dream. And I'm like, okay. And when we were little, he was like known for having dreams. He would have dreams that were the most vivid, cool dreams. And he'd always sit down and write books. But he's like, I had this dream. And in the dream, you and I were writing this book, but I was seeing it play out as you and I were sitting down writing it. So I want you to write a book with me.
That's cool.
I was like, okay, what's it called? You know? And so we sat down and we started to come together with our ideas. And I guess over the last 16 years, we finally this year just finished the book.
Wow.
So, the book is called Dvara, which means portal in Hindu. And Hindi. And we created this whole new world. And it's a 5-book series. We finished the first book completely. We edited it just this year, probably about 4 months ago now. And now we're onto that point where we want to look for where you're at. You know, we want to find a publisher or an agent and get the book out there. It's a 5-book series. So the second book is halfway done. The third, fourth, and fifth book are already mapped out exactly how we want them. So there you go. So, but sometimes this year when we were sitting down and we were editing it together, he came into town. He lives in Washington State and he flew down here to El Paso. And for 4 days, we were just sun up to sundown, working. And my gosh, I'll sit there sometimes and I'm like, this is amazing. I cannot wait till people get to read this. And it's going to blow the world's mind. There's just some really cool stuff in it. So, but while I was going to college, I didn't want, because while you're in college, a lot of time you have to share your manuscript and then your class has to edit it and people talk about it, right? Mm-hmm. It's so precious to me and like so like different than anything I've ever read. There's so many new ideas. And I mean, maybe they're out there, but I haven't read them personally, that I was like, I'm selfish. I don't want to share it with my college friends, you know, and these college classes, you never know what's going to happen. So I started writing a new book, and that one is called Villains and Heroes. And it's actually a comic book, but it's a novel. And so, cool. Yeah, it's all about this little kid named Crix Wolf. And he has, Wolf, you like that?
Yes.
In the first chapter that he has the power to control electricity. And in that chapter, his mom is dying. And it's really this entire book about superheroes and this little kid. And so I started writing that. And I've actually been offered a few times to have that published by people in college that were reading it. But I kind of wanted to hold back and wait till it was finished. And so that one is, to me, it's a little masterpiece. I go read it to the schools around here, to my kids' schools when they're little. I'll read the first couple chapters. And man, I've had so many people, oh my gosh, I can't wait to hear what happens next, you know? And so that one's one that I am still working on. I haven't finished the first book yet, but it's really good. And what's cool is this community is all about comics. Everybody in this community would love it. Like they really, really would, because there's so many twists and turns and there's powers here and powers there. And it's really fun. And then last but not least, I've written kids books for my kids. So I had a class maybe in 2007 said it was all about publishing for kids, and we had to write kids books. And so I went home and I was thinking what I should write. And one of my sons, his name's Timmy, and you guys have probably seen Timmy before because he's unboxed and done things too. And he has this wild imagination, right? Like I would find him in the house swinging on the walls, pretending he was Spider-Man when he was like 3, you know, and then I'd sit there and watch him and he'd have this whole battle. And like just for a half an hour by himself, just you could see the magic working in him, you know, and it was so wonderful. And so I sat down and I wrote a story called Timothy Joseph and the sword in my dad's room that he says not to touch. And so I wrote this whole little story and followed to the T what kids' books should be, you know, and it turned out really good. And then I was inspired to do that for the rest of my kids. And so right now, the books that I'm actually trying in this moment to send out are my kids' books. I need to find somebody that can do the artwork, and then but I also am trying to send it out to different publishing companies, and those are really cute and really fun, and I'm really excited because if I can get my foot in the door with those, then maybe I can get the rest of it to follow, you know?
Yeah.
So I know that was a long-winded explanation. Like, yes, things.
You're all good, but that is perfect timing. We're at the 20-minute mark. I'm gonna shuffle aside and let the fire facts happen. Subtly shuffle a chair back in. Well, thank you, Bowser. I think he needed the love for the 7 kids connection.
That's right.
I'm gonna be totally honest with you. Don't want to be a buzzkill. I could not hear Kate at all.
Yeah,
Oh man.
Something went on there, and I think John's saying the same thing. He couldn't hear him too well.
Uh-oh.
I love those fire facts.
Do you want to
Run them off again, Kate.
Say 'em
Louder
again.
and faster.
just come here. Just come here. Just join me. Come on.
Let's hear it, Kate.
Take it off screen if that's okay.
Okay.
It'll be a lot easier.
You're taking up time, dude.
Okay, I'll just say them again. So the longest book recorded is called The Remembrance of Things Past. It has 4,215 pages.
Ooh.
The first comic ever created was called The Adventures of Obia Oldbuck, and it was published in 1837.
Oh.
And number 3 is papers created from shavings of wood mixed with chemicals and water to create like a pulp. And then they press it down into a sheet and then draw lines on it. And then they sell it to companies, and then the companies sell that to consumers. And then Bowser was just saying that he needed to go tend to his children.
I like Bowser. Good man.
Yeah, which I didn't actually know. I kept trying to figure out how they actually got wood to paper. So, and it should have been just something I should have just looked up like years ago, but I just never bothered. So,
That's all right. That's all right.
all right. Well, we have.
Poetry.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
Poem.
Okay. Matt, would you like to read your poem?
Yeah, sure. Okay. So a lot of my poetry, like most people, it means something to them, right? So when I was a kid, there comes a point where you're like, your faith is your parents' faith, and you want to know for yourself if it's true, right? So I had this really cool experience where I was in the Boy Scouts, and I was going to be inducted to this Order of the Arrow. It's like an Indian, Native American ritual. And you go out, they have this huge bonfire, and they kind of cleanse your soul, and they take you out into the middle of the woods, and they leave you there for 24 hours by yourself, and you can't talk. Okay. And so, I think I was 14. And so I went out there, and it's kind of creepy. You're out in the woods all by yourself. And I remember they took me out there after this cool ceremony, and I'm by myself and literally out in a sleeping bag under the stars in the mountains. And so there's bears, there's all kinds of stuff. It's interesting. But as I was lying there and I was looking up at the sky, I had this amazing experience that changed my life, right? So I wrote a poem about that, and I will share it with you guys now. All right. And this is called Cloudcroft Woodland. All right. Here it goes. The forest is calm tonight. The stars, numerous as the sands of the sea, gleam on a black canvas. The spruce trees bow at the foot of the mighty mountain. I wish you could see. The wind rustles through the pines and seems to race the babble of the brook. The cold prickles at my exposed skin, but yet My heart, it burns with an eternal note of communication. All things denote that there is a God, words out of the dust like one who is dead. Who is the mechanic? Who is the architect? Who is the scientist? Who is the gardener? The dirt crumbling between my fingers. Who am I? Olea shines brighter than them all. Her terrestrial crown causes men's knees to quake in waves, on the ocean bed, in reflections of the long lost and dead. Am I too far gone? A whisper, a childhood memory. Though every legion would fight to stop, my eyes behold majestic stars. My soul is touched by the finger of God. That's it.
Dang, man.
That was beautiful,
that was
Matt.
really
that was
good.
beautiful.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for sharing that with us.
Yeah.
We need Cade's sound maker for all the claps. That was really good.
Thank you. I've never read any of my poetry out loud to anybody, so you guys are the first that get to hear it.
We're breaking boundaries, man.
That made me all emotional.
Oh, Cade's over there crying.
Thank you, Kate. Thank you. I read it a few times before I read it, because I usually cry when I read that, because it was a very special experience. So I read it a whole bunch today so that I would not cry while I was on camera.
Oh, man.
Love you, John. Thanks, dude. Thank you, guys. Thank you, everybody. Yeah. So, but I love poetry. I have pages and pages of poetry and short stories and all kinds of stuff that I honestly love literature. And I love the feelings of my heart when I'm able to put things down on paper. And there's a quote from Harry Potter, and I'm trying to remember it. I can't remember, but she talks about how Dumbledore saying how words are magic. And I really believe that, with words you can harm people, and with words you can lift people up.
So
And
true.
it's up to you to
And
choose.
it's mightier than the sword. Yeah.
Yeah. Absolutely. So, but yeah, I love writing, and I love reading. It's just good stuff.
It is. And, and I don't know if the same is for you, but it is for me, is that when I write, it's more for the purpose of waiting for someone else to read it, to get lost in the world that I am constantly swimming in. I am probably not actually here 60% of the time. I am, when I'm at work, I used to have just like mind-numbing things to do, and I could just do them on autopilot. And in my head, I would be just off in a different land. And being able to write is what, for me, is how I can just share all these crazy ideas and all these fun stories with everybody else.
Yeah.
So, and it's really, really nice, because there are some people, like how books have touched you. For some people, it does make that difference.
Yeah.
And I think that's really important,
I agree. I think one of the most important things about writing is understanding and knowing your audience, and knowing what you want to convey to that audience, And so I wouldn't write the same things to a 4-year-old that I'm going to write to an 11-year-old or a 22-year-old. I wouldn't write the same things to a church congregation that I'm going to write to the comic book congregation. I may have the same type of feeling or sentiment, but I'm definitely going to use words in a different way and organize my thoughts in a different way, because your audience matters. And I think it's fun to, like, this story, when I wrote this, I really wanted my kids to understand this poem. I wanted them to understand in words, without being there, the feelings that I had that night. As this little 14-year-old kid, all alone by myself, praying and asking God, like, are you really there? And here come the emotions.
Sorry.
Sorry, trying to keep it together. But that's the thing. I wanted to write something so somebody could read it and feel a piece of my soul from that night, and feel that experience through my words. So I love that you say that, because we have to share what we feel. it's why we do what we do, you know?
Yeah.
So
Okay. Very happy note. I'm gonna move on right there. All right, chat. Are you ready? We're right on the 30-minute mark, so I'm gonna try and do this quick. I have for you tonight another piece done by Jake Volo, is another sketch. So
beautiful.
it is from the book. Okay, so this is Cliff. That obviously means nothing to you yet, but it will. He is a secondary character from the book, and he is kind of the he's one of the comic relief characters.
Cool.
So and just this picture paints him in just a really, really cool light. So
Well, and Matt, you've already got 2 of the pictures.
yeah, so I
should
don't
we
know if
go
I
for
should
3?
let you. I don't know. You've already gotten 2.
I'll let everybody else tonight have a chance, but if they take too long,
Fine. Okay. All right, here we go, chat. I'm gonna give you 30 seconds to answer this question. Oh, getting the timer ready. I was honestly just gonna use the live timer. All right. Let me know when you're ready. Okay. Here's the question for you, and I honestly kind of think I might need to do like a hat drawing. Who remembers the name of my first Isle of show? What was it? Isle of what? As kind of a tribute to the 5th episode. Yay!
John's here. John.
Yep, John should know.
John should know.
Let's go, John.
I'm kind of waiting for the comments to just go start flying by.
Drew got it. Bang.
Drew got it?
Drew got it right away.
And
Yep.
Sam.
No,
Yeah,
Sam
no.
got it too.
Yeah.
John, I think I know. John, you were too slow. Tom, I do. I win. You didn't say what it is. You can't say you know and then don't put the name.
All right. So we have a 3-way tie, I guess we'll say. Because Drew and
Sam, Rob.
and Sam. So take off Matt's hat.
Yes. This is going to be nice.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right,
There's a random piece of paper. Oh, probably shouldn't leave the camera. That's not, yeah.
All right. So we've got Drew. We've got Rob. And we've got Sam. All right. While we're doing this, you got any more poems to read?
Yeah, you got anything else anything to wrap up on while we're
Yes,
fumbling
please.
about?
More
Yeah, I could definitely read you guys some more stuff if you'd like.
Do it.
Yes.
Okay, let's see. So this poem is a poem that I wrote for my wife.
Aw.
This one I actually wrote for her in high school though. So
Oh,
my favorite band is The Cure. I love The Cure. And we stole my sister's car while she was taking a shower. And we drove to this place called All That Music, and we bought a new Cure album. And when we got in the car, we ripped it out of the plastic, put it in. The first song that came on, I fell in love with instantly. And this is like the moment that I got the idea for the poem. Okay. So it's called The First Time I Heard. So I was young and so was she, but I was still old enough to drive her through El Paso's newly paved streets. And as we drove with the windows down, the wind blew through her hair, roaring like a lion. And when The Cure began to sing, Yesterday I Got So Old, I Felt Like I Could Die, my heart reminded me of the time when I was 5. The waitress poured too much hot chocolate into my mug. I looked over at her softly laughing and singing along. Come back, don't walk away. Come back today. Come back, why can't you see? Come back to me. Her cheeks were roses and her nose was ice. She smiled, removing her silky chocolate hair, revealing her oriental eyes. And in those eyes, I could see 1,000 days. I saw the time I played wedding in the sandy schoolyard with a white freckled girl I hardly knew. I saw the time that I held my first black dog in small jean overalls and my red Mr. Rogers sweater. I saw the time I sold the sweetest lemonade to the bitterest old Japanese lady, but still she paid me a bright silver quarter. I saw the time I was 6 and I dressed up in my old man's clothes and dreamed my feet would one day fit in his fancy shoes. And so we discovered songs and love and the anger of my older sister. But still there she was singing, without you, without you, without you. Yeah.
Aww. So cute.
So you had hair back then, Matt?
I did.
Nice.
I couldn't help myself.
Hey, it's okay. I all the time like I miss my hair, and then my kids see pictures and like, oh, Dad, you were ugly with hair.
Oh.
So it's kind of like, okay, I guess I feel good about myself.
Well, you are definitely not so bad without it.
No.
So,
Thank you.
all right, we're gonna do our drawing.
All right, are you guys
Peter?
ready? I am. Okay, I'm just gonna lean awkwardly back here.
Honey, you can't see anyway. I folded them up.
Okay, but still, it adds dramatic effect.
Oh, it adds the drama.
Yes,
The drama.
yes.
Okay.
Okay, this one's been like sticking to my finger for like a minute. I'm gonna pick this one.
All right.
All right. It was Drew, Comic Assassin, the first one to pop it up.
Congratulations.
That's true.
Very nice. Who is going to be a future guest as well?
Who is going to be a future
So,
guest? Yes. So,
Perfect. Congratulations. Well,
Alrighty.
Matt, we are over 30 minutes, but you know what? I would love to hear one more poem from you. One more if you got it, or a favorite quote from a book or anything.
What do you tell me what you want? I'll give you any of them.
No, you pick. It's your show, man.
Man, you are too nice. I think people have heard enough of my poetry.
no way, man. No way.
I will read you one of my favorite quotes. First, I got to show you this one. It's kind of cheating, but we did a family gift exchange, and my little sister is getting ready to go serve a mission for our church. So she's saving up all her money. She's got to pay for herself. It's like 11 grand for 2 years. She's going to go out and knock doors. You guys have probably seen the Mormon missionaries with their tags and everything.
Absolutely.
So yeah, she's going to go do that. And so she didn't have money, but she wanted to participate. And so she handmade me this of my favorite quote of all time from Dumbledore.
I'm going to make
That's
him
cool.
really fast.
Okay.
Isn't that awesome? So look at that. Like she put this little thing here and it moves and it's beautiful, but that's my favorite quote ever. I absolutely love it. But I want to read you guys a different quote. That was cheating.
That was
It's from Lord of the Rings. And sometimes my kids go through hard things, you know, and all of us do as human beings. And sometimes we want to ask why with anger. And I love this quote from Lord of the Rings. This is Frodo, and he's talking to himself and thinking, and he says, I wish the ring had never come to me. I wish none of this had happened. And then Gandalf, you hear his voice in his head. He says, so do all who live to see such times, but that's not for them to decide. All we have to decide is what to do with the time that is given to us. There are forces at work in this world, Frodo, besides the will of evil. And I love that because it's so true. We can kick and scream and yell at the world when the world's kicking and screaming at us and give up and be angry, or we can get up and fight again, you know, and decide to do good no matter what we're dealt. And so I love that quote. Something I try to live by when things are hard. I try really to make sure I don't give up and I don't complain, but I push forward, and I'm grateful for the good that I have. So love that quote.
very, very nice, my friend. Very, very nice.
It was a perfect way to
It was
end
a
the
perfect
show.
way to end the show. Thank you.
Thank you guys. I love being on here with you.
It was so much fun. Thank you. And I know we pushed our time just a little bit, but it was definitely worth it. Thank you so much for coming on. I hope you guys had fun. And thank you to everyone in the chat who's popped on. A big lion cat. I know you've been kind of having kittens over there. You heard one thing about lion, and you've been spamming the chat. But thank you all so much for coming and showing your support and all the fun little comments. I'll have to go back through and read later because there was a lot of funny ones going by.
Yeah.
So thank you all so much. And Matt, thank you so much for coming on to the show tonight. It was a lot of fun.
Thank you.
All righty. I think that just about does it.
We will
See you all later.
The end.
See you guys.